The diplomatic threshold. The crystalline dome of the Galactic Conclave headquarters refracted light across the chamber floor in dancing patterns of blue and violet. Ambassador Elena Cortez watched these patterns absently, trying to maintain her composure as the Conclave's ruling council delivered what amounted to a diplomatic slap in the face. Therefore, intoned High Counselor Vrel, his forearms making the formal gesture of resolution, the petition for humanity's expanded colonization rights in the Orion sector is denied. The Council has determined that human expansion should be limited to current territories until further stability assessments can be performed. Elena maintained her practiced smile, though she felt her right eye wanting to twitch. 3 years of negotiations, technology sharing, and military support against the Drazic incursions, and this was their answer. A patronizing dismissal wrapped in bureaucratic pleasantries. "I see," she said, her voice modulated to perfect diplomatic pitch. "May I inquire as to the specific concerns that led to this decision?" The 7 council members exchanged glances. Unlike humans, most species in the conclave had poor control over their biological indicators of discomfort. Vrel's secondary breathing sacs inflated slightly. Representative Anxtal's crystalline exoskeleton shifted hues toward anxious orange. The Quarian delegate's sensory tendrils coiled tightly against its body. "Ambassador Cortez," said Anaxaloran, the Seraphim representative whose species was known for its directness, "your species presents certain unpredictabilities that concern the Council." "Unpredictabilities," Elena repeated, still smiling. "Your capacity to shift rapidly between emotional states," Anxalaran continued. "Cultural observers have documented numerous instances where humans transition from calm cooperation to intense aggression with minimal transition period." Elena nodded thoughtfully. "I see. You're concerned about our emotional range." "Not merely the range," High Counselor Vrel interjected, "but the control. Or rather, the apparent lack thereof." The chamber fell silent. Elena took a measured breath, calculating her next move carefully. For 3 years, she had played by the Conclave's rules. She had maintained the careful veneer of measured diplomacy that humans had perfected over centuries. She had demonstrated humanity's willingness to compromise, to adapt, to play well with others. And where had it gotten them? "Before I respond formally to the Council's decision," Elena said carefully, "I would like to clarify something. You believe humans lack emotional control. The evidence suggests as much," said Vrel. "Your own historical records show cycles of peace punctuated by extraordinary violence. Your entertainment glorifies emotional outbursts. Even your diplomatic corps shows concerning patterns. Such as 2 cycles ago," contributed Maxtal. "Your assistant attaché, James Chen, was observed entering a private chamber after negotiations with the Drosian Federation, where he proceeded to smash a decorative object before returning to talks with perfect composure. Our psychiatric analysts found this behavior deeply concerning." Elena suppressed a laugh. James was following standard diplomatic protocol for emotional regulation. The object was provided specifically for that purpose. "You deliberately provide items for your diplomats to destroy." Vrel's voice carried genuine shock. "When necessary, yes." Elena gazed around the chamber, noting the confusion and alarm on alien faces. "What you're observing, council members, isn't lack of control. It's the opposite. Humans maintain what we internally call polite mode when dealing with other species." She rose from her seat and approached the central display dais, ignoring the subtle shift of the security drones tracking her movement. With a few precise gestures, she called up data on the central holographic display. "Humanity has the widest documented emotional bandwidth of any spacefaring species," she explained. "Our neurochemistry allows for rapid transitions between emotional states without compromising cognitive function. What you perceive as instability is actually adaptability." "Then why hide these emotions?" asked Anxaloran. "The Conclave values transparency in all diplomatic exchanges." Elena's smile tightened slightly. "Because our full emotional range tends to overwhelm other species. We've learned to moderate our expressions out of consideration, not deception. Consideration, Vrel scoffed. Or calculation. Something shifted in Alina's expression. The 7 council members couldn't quite identify what had changed, but suddenly the atmosphere in the chamber felt different. The security AI registered a subtle elevation in threat assessment levels. "You misunderstand," Alina said, her voice lower now, more resonant. "We're not hiding our emotions to deceive you. We're restraining them to protect you." "Protect us?" Nextel's crystalline form flashed indignant red. "From what precisely?" Alina placed her diplomatic tablet on the central dais with deliberate care. "From the full force of human conviction. Tell me, Council, do you know why we've been so accommodating these past 3 years? Why we've accepted delay after delay, concession after concession?" No one answered. The security drones moved fractionally closer. "It wasn't weakness," Alina continued. "It was patience, a quality your assessment of humanity seems to have overlooked." She straightened her formal attire and made a decision. For 3 years, humanity had played by the Conclave's rules. Perhaps it was time they understood exactly whom they were dealing with. Would the Council like to see what happens when a human diplomat deactivates polite mode? She asked, her voice still perfectly calm. High Councilor Vrel's breathing sacs fully inflated now, a clear sign of alarm in his species. "Ambassador Cortez, I'm not certain what you're implying." "But I'm not implying anything," Alina interrupted, something no diplomat had done to a High Councilor in recorded Conclave history. "I'm stating a fact. You've denied humanity's petition based on a fundamental misunderstanding of our nature. I believe a correction is in order." She stepped back from the dais, and the council members watched in fascination and growing alarm as Alina Cortez underwent a transformation. Her carefully controlled posture loosened. Her diplomatic smile faded, replaced by an expression of focused intensity. Even her voice changed, dropping the modulated tones of interspecies diplomacy for something more direct, more human. "Let me be absolutely clear," she said, and several council members flinched at the raw authority now evident in her voice. "Humanity has contributed quantum communication networks that unified your scattered worlds. Our medical technologies have cured 3 pan-galactic plagues. Our military vessels stood against the Drazic when your combined fleets faltered." She began to pace, completely ignoring diplomatic protocol. The security drones tracked her movements but made no move to intervene. "And in return, you've delayed our membership applications, restricted our colonial expansion, and imposed trade regulations that exist for no other species. You've mistaken courtesy for weakness and patience for lack of resolve." "Ambassador," Vrel began. "I'm not finished," Alina said, and the force behind those 3 words silenced the High Councilor instantly. "You claim to be concerned about human emotional volatility. You haven't seen anything yet. What you're witnessing right now is still measured, still controlled. This isn't a human losing control. This is a human choosing to show you exactly how much control we have." She called up new images on the display. Human achievements, battles won against impossible odds, scientific breakthroughs that had transformed galactic civilization. "We built civilizations, split atoms, and reached the stars while carrying emotions that would shatter most of your species' minds," she continued. "We don't lack control. We have mastered it in ways you can't comprehend." The chamber had fallen completely silent. Even the environmental systems seemed to have quieted in response to the tension. "You have exactly 1 rotation to reconsider your decision," Alina said, her voice now deadly calm. "During that time, I suggest you review the actual data on human diplomatic interactions and contributions, rather than relying on your biased cultural observations." She gathered her materials with efficient movements. "In the meantime, I will be notifying Earth that all technology-sharing initiatives are to be suspended pending the Council's revised assessment. Our military vessels currently defending your Proxima outposts will maintain their positions for now, but will not engage in any new operations." "This is outrageous." Vrel finally found his voice. You cannot simply. I can and I will. Elena cut him off again. And that's still me being diplomatic. The next human you meet might not be as restrained as I am. She walked toward the chamber doors with measured steps, pausing only briefly before exiting. We don't want special treatment, Council. We just want recognition of what we've contributed and what we're capable of. One rotation. Choose wisely. As the doors sealed behind Ambassador Cortez, the conclave chamber erupted into chaos. Security drones hovered uncertainly, their threat assessment algorithms struggling to process what had just occurred. None of the council members could recall ever witnessing such a display in the centuries-old history of the conclave. Beneath his official robes, High Counselor Vrel felt something he hadn't experienced since his species' evolutionary past, a primal sensation of being in the presence of an apex predator. And for the first time in his distinguished career, he wondered if the council had made a catastrophic error in judgment. Unleashed potential. Unprecedented. Completely unacceptable. High Counselor Vrel's voice reverberated through the emergency council chamber. Only the highest-ranking members had been admitted to this crisis meeting, and the tension hung thick in the atmosphere. The human ambassador has violated every protocol of diplomatic conduct, Mextal added, crystalline form flashing between agitated colors. We should formally censure Earth immediately. Anxelaran, the Seraphim representative, had remained silent since the emergency session began. Now all eyes turned to her as she finally spoke. Before we make any decisions, I believe we should review Ambassador Cortez's complete biometric data from the confrontation. What purpose would that serve? Vrel demanded. We all witnessed her emotional outburst. Did we? Lauren countered. Computer, display Ambassador Cortez's vital signs during the entire session, compared against human diplomatic baseline. The central display shimmered to life, showing multiple charts and graphs. The council members studied them in silence. This can't be correct, Mextal finally said. According to these readings, her stress hormones, heart rate, and neural patterns were all within controlled parameters throughout the entire exchange. Exactly, Anxelaran said. What we witnessed wasn't an emotional outburst. It was a calculated diplomatic strategy. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. It wasn't that Ambassador Cortez had lost control. She had deliberately chosen to demonstrate precisely how much control she possessed. There's more, Anxelaran continued. I've been examining the historical data Ambassador Cortez referenced. Computer, display comparative analysis of human contributions to conclave initiatives over the past 3 standard years. New information flowed across the display. Scientific breakthroughs, military assistance, medical advancements. The data was overwhelming. In just 3 years, humanity had contributed more to the conclave's progress than some founding species had in centuries. Why wasn't this data factored into our decision? Asked a junior counselor from the back. Vrel's breathing sacs deflated slightly, a sign of embarrassment. The assessment committee focused primarily on behavioral stability metrics and expansion risk factors. These contributions were noted but not weighted appropriately. Because we were afraid, Anxelaran stated bluntly. We saw humanity's adaptive capabilities and rapid advancement, and we responded with fear masked as concern. Before anyone could respond, the chamber door chimed. Ambassador Cortez requests audience with the Emergency Council, announced the AI attendant. Glances were exchanged around the room. Less than 6 hours had passed since the confrontation, far short of the 1 rotation deadline Elena had given them. Admit her, Vrel finally said. When Ambassador Cortez entered, the council members noticed immediately that something was different. She carried herself with the same confident posture they had witnessed during her polite mode deactivation, but there was no anger, no intensity radiating from her. Instead, she projected a calm certainty that was somehow more commanding than her earlier display. Council members, she greeted them with a respectful nod, but not the overly deferential bow that had been standard in previous interactions. I appreciate you granting me this audience. Ambassador, Vrel acknowledged, his tone cautious. We expected you would wait the full rotation before returning. I considered it, Elena replied, taking the central position without waiting for permission. But I realized that would be counterproductive. Humanity isn't interested in power displays or intimidation tactics. We're interested in understanding and progress. She gestured to the data still displayed on the screens. I see you've been reviewing our contributions. Good. That's a start. But I'm here to address something more fundamental. The nature of human adaptability that seems to concern you so deeply. With practiced movements, Elena activated her personal projector, adding new dimensions to the display. What your cultural observers have misinterpreted as emotional instability is actually our greatest evolutionary advantage. Humans don't simply experience emotions, we harness them. The display showed brain scans, comparing human neural patterns to those of other conclave species. When we shift emotional states, we don't lose cognitive function, we enhance it. Anger sharpens our focus. Fear heightens our awareness. Joy increases our creativity. We've evolved to integrate these states rather than be controlled by them. She zoomed in on specific neural pathways. This integration allows us to adapt to changing circumstances with unparalleled speed. It's why we advanced from primitive technology to spaceflight in a mere few millennia, while most conclave species required tens of thousands of years. And the polite mode you mentioned? Enx, Lauren asked. A social adaptation, Elena explained. When humans first encountered alien species, we quickly realized our full emotional bandwidth was overwhelming, even frightening, to others. Rather than force other species to adapt to us, we chose to adapt ourselves, developing diplomatic protocols that presented a more palatable version of humanity. Why reveal this now? Vrel questioned. If your intention was accommodation, why this sudden change? Elena's expression softened slightly. Because accommodation isn't effective when it's mistaken for weakness. You needed to understand that our restraint is a choice, not a limitation. Humans contain multitudes, council members. We can be your greatest allies or your most formidable opponents. The choice has always been yours. She called up new projections, detailed plans for joint ventures, expanded colonization that benefited both human and non-human worlds, technological initiatives that could transform the galaxy. These are the possibilities we see, she continued. Not human dominance, but genuine partnership. We don't want to control the conclave. We want to help it evolve beyond its current limitations. And if we refuse? Next, Tall asked, though her crystalline hue had shifted to a more receptive blue. Then humanity will pursue its own path, Elena replied simply. We'll form bilateral agreements with individual species, develop our technologies independently, and continue our expansion at our own pace. But that path leads to division rather than unity, and we genuinely believe the galaxy needs unity to face what's coming. What's coming? Vrel leaned forward, suddenly alert. Elena's expression grew grave. The void between galaxies isn't empty, Counselor. Our long-range sensors have detected something approaching, something old and vast and hungry. Humanity has faced extinction-level threats before. It's part of what forged our adaptability. The question is whether the Conclave is ready to face such a threat. She let the implication hang in the air for a moment before continuing more softly. We don't want to frighten you. We want to prepare alongside you, but that requires mutual respect and understanding. The council chamber fell silent as the members processed everything they had heard. For some, it was the first time they had truly considered humanity not as a problem to be managed, but as a partner with unique perspectives and abilities. Finally, High Counselor Vrel spoke. Ambassador Cortez, I believe the Council owes humanity an apology. Our assessment was incomplete, perhaps willfully so. Elena inclined her head, acknowledging his words without interrupting. I propose, Vrel continued, his voice gaining strength, that we immediately rescind our previous ruling and establish a joint committee to reassess humanity's expansion petition, with proper weight given to all factors. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Axelaren stepped forward, her elegant form catching the light. I further propose that Ambassador Cortez be invited to join the Conclave's Strategic Advisory Council, a position no junior species has held before. If what she says about the approaching threat is true, we will need humanity's unique perspective. Elena's expression remained measured, but there was a glint of satisfaction in her eyes. On behalf of Earth, I accept both proposals. And I offer something in return. Full access to our deep space sensing technology and the raw data we've collected on the anomaly. The Council accepts, Vrel said without hesitation, all four arms moving in the formal gesture of agreement. And Ambassador, if I may speak personally rather than officially. Elena nodded encouragingly. I believe I understand now what you meant about your emotional restraint being for our benefit. What you showed us yesterday, that was still restrained, wasn't it? I believe I understand now what you meant about your emotional restraint being for our benefit. What you showed us yesterday, that was still restrained, wasn't it? A small smile played at the corners of Elena's mouth. Let's just say that was diplomatic directness, Counselor. True human emotional intensity is something I hope the Conclave never needs to witness. It typically only emerges when our survival is threatened. And if this threat from beyond proves real? Tall asked, her crystalline form shimmering with concern. Then the galaxy will see what happens when humanity's full potential is truly unleashed, Elena replied calmly. Not in anger or aggression, but in determination and ingenuity. When humans face extinction, Counselor, we don't just fight. We transcend. As the meeting concluded and formal agreements were prepared, the Council members watched Ambassador Cortez with new eyes. The way she moved, spoke, even breathed seemed different now that they understood what they were seeing. Not a primitive species struggling with emotional control, but an apex adaptive intelligence choosing which aspects of itself to reveal. In less than a day, humanity's position in the galactic community had fundamentally transformed. No longer seen as unpredictable newcomers to be contained and managed, they were now recognized as essential allies whose unique evolutionary path had produced capabilities no other species possessed. And as word spread throughout the conclave about Ambassador Cortez's demonstration and the subsequent reversal of the Council's decision, a new understanding began to emerge among the galaxy's diverse civilizations. Humans didn't need to be feared for their emotional intensity, but perhaps they should be respected for their mastery of it. 3 cycles later, as joint human conclave expeditions began monitoring the approaching anomaly from beyond, High Counselor Vrel found himself reflecting on that pivotal moment when humanity's polite mode had been switched off. In retrospect, it hadn't been frightening at all. It had been illuminating, like seeing the full spectrum of light after living in perpetual twilight. And as reports from the expeditions grew increasingly concerning, Vrel found himself grateful that when the darkness finally arrived, humanity would be standing alongside them, no longer restrained by misunderstanding, but fully embraced for exactly what they were, adaptable, resilient, and unflinchingly determined when faced with impossible odds. The day the Council witnessed humanity's polite mode turn off had been more than a diplomatic revelation. It had been the day the galaxy's future was secured.